My name is Laura Overton, and I head up towards maturity, and we're a benchmark research organisation analysing the effectiveness of learning and learning technologies in the workplace. So my background is 30 years of implementation of technologies, and I've been involved with the Learning Technology Show in London for the last 20 years. So it's a real privilege for me today to be hosting this panel, and more of a privilege because of the esteemed panelists. Norazah, I've got to know only over the last few days, and you know, if there is anything going on in e-learning in Malaysia that she is not involved with, then I would be incredibly surprised. Not only is she the Dean of the Department for Faculty for Education, but she's also active in e-learning associations, mobile learning associations, Asia and European hubs of learning, e-learning culture. So Norazah, it's a real joy. And a little known fact about Norazah is that her belief is together we are excellent. And so I've really seen that in action as you've been collecting friends and ideas over the last few days. So it's a real joy to have you on the panel, so thank you. And Phil Gray, I've met this today, and I was really excited. We've got a little bit of a history coming back to London. His history has been started really in learning and in innovation, but more recently he's been heading up the innovation department in Standard Chartered Bank, and also he's just started as a founder of an organisation called Lions Not Dogs. So here is a man who loves innovation, loves new thinking, loves to do things differently, both from a learning perspective. And I think he is, on this panel, the only failed .com millionaire at the age of 29. So a lot of perspective there. And David, welcome. Really thrilled to have you here.
Sorry, I got caught outside.
Are you mic'd up?
Yep.
Perfect.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect.
Did you close the deal?
So with David,
you close the deal?
Yeah.
David, as many know, is the Chief Learning Architect of Kydon, but he's had 20 years of experience in the workplace, the military specifically. And actually, a little known fact about David, he was a colonel in the military, which actually says even more about having that prestige position and also saying actually learning, his passion for learning, his passion for knowledge sharing, his passion for technology and innovation has meant that actually in the last 5 years he's kind of dedicated his career to that. So an amazing panel, and we're here to discuss the future of learning in the workplace. But before we do that, I think it would be really good to get your quick perspectives on what you think the future of work is going to look like. Because we need to get a context, I think, for before we discuss the future of learning. So David, would you like to kind of give your views on the future of work? What do you think are some of the key characteristics that we need to be aware of?
I think one of the clear aspect of the future of work is the lack of clarity over it, to be honest. Unlike the past where we can kind of define more clearly the competencies, more clearly the skill sets that needs to be done or needs to be had by our workforce, the speed of change that's happening at the workplace requires our people to have a new set of skills that's about change, that's about adaptability, that's about keeping up with the different things that's happening around them rather than just within them. This is the future of work. The future of work is chaotic, the future of work is messy, the future of work is volatile, the future of work is just difficult, right? I'm not making it difficult for our L&D people, right? But the honest truth is that unless we recognize that one of the key requirements for us to do is to build that resiliency in our workforce, build the resiliency to change and to adapt, then we perhaps have not prepared them for the future of work.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
So, Phil, I know you've got some views on this. So
Yeah,
what's your thought about the future of work? You've lived in many futures.
Yes, great, yeah. Well, I love the question, right? Because the question, feedback there, the question's been posed, the future of work, since the Industrial Revolution. Right? People have been asking, oh, well, now all of a sudden there's agrarian shift from farms into factories, and what's the future of work? And we've seen over the last 200, 300 years, lots of either revolutions or evolutions around it. And I don't think it's any different. I think, they've said it's continuing to happen. Some of the language we use is different. So we used to talk about, the fear in the early, turn of the century was around, automation. Now we call it robotic process automation, right? But it's still actually the same, pretty much the same thing. So I think, as David said, that the only real constant is change. The piece that is debatable is the pace of change, and I think that's the thing that we're probably seeing, is that it's metamorphosizing more often. And so what is the skill set then that is the most important that underpins that? It's the ability to deal with that and to pivot one's capability and one's focus more readily, right? I think that's probably the key shift I think we're seeing. So a lot of the same, but also a lot of difference in terms of the pace in which it's happening at.
Yeah, that pace of change, I think, is the thing that's just accelerating all the time. The role of technology is coming in, and the new requirements in industry as well. But Norazah, what do you think that actually means for learning professionals today? Are they still relevant in this new world?
Yeah, I like that question, Laura. Okay, about the readiness, they feel that they are relevant. I think this depends. One size cannot fit all. It's always my message when I give training, because it has to be customized. And in this future world, the work collaboration is very important. Although collaboration is being used previously, but in this future world, the word collaboration is not only face-to-face, it is more of virtual. And whether we are ready, whether we realize or we don't realize, we have to know that we are now in the wave of the 4th Industrial Revolution, where all the mega trends on digital, mega trends on physical, on biological, all those, at least 3 main elements has to be under our consideration. And also about 21st century skills. And the workplace. The workplace, maybe now we are talking about more of virtual. And we have to know, when we are in the workplace, as myself as a learning designer, if I design the learning environment, the first thing we need to know is about the learner, the analysis part. So we have to know about our learner. Like if we are facing like workplace, they are all adult learners. Yesterday I met all those leaders from the bank, and they are looking for techniques. They are looking for an environment which is really friendly to the adult learners. So in my opinion, we need to know what are their characteristics. Like in a bank, in the academic, in any workplace, if you are dealing with learners, some of the main characteristics, they are self-directed. They are very objective-oriented. When they attend any course or training, they know what they want to do. And they also have the characteristic of they want everything at their own pace and what is it for them. And if we design those, we need to get the buy-in from them, so that the material that we design really suit them. And if you are dealing with dealing with students, we are dealing with the new generations. Research has shown that what are the characteristics of new generations? They like to be, they want to have personalized learning environment. They don't really like to be in this lecture hall for 3 hours. Maybe in that 3 hours, we only come face to face for only 1 hour. And they want things that is mobile. They want everything handy. And they also want to have their space in the virtual world. Things come from downloading material, goes into uploading where they have a space in their world. And of course, they are very their rapport with technology is very tight. So the way we design it.
So I think that's really interesting from the perspective of us getting ready for the future of work. We need to be really cognizant of who our customers are. And I know for a while we've been talking about learner-centric. In fact, 30 years of my career, everyone's been talking about learner-centric learning, but I think what you're saying here is that that's becoming more vital. Is that, David, something that you're also seeing in your work? You know, the relationship of the learning professional with the learner?
I think the relationship between the learning professional and the learner has remained constant in a sense that it is the learning professional's responsibility to engage the learners. But I think sometimes we do fall into the trap of being overwhelmed by technology, if you like. There is a need for us to keep up with technology. There is a need for us to pay attention to where the technology trends are going and how we perhaps can make full use of it and can exploit it for the purposes of our organization. But it's necessary, and it's completely necessary for us as learning professionals to take a step back and go back to the foundation. And one of the things about foundation is what is learning about? What is learning about? Learning is about the learner's ability, right, to, through the change in behavior, perform better in the workplace, right? And how do we achieve this change in behavior? How do we influence this change in behavior in a sustained manner, in a real manner, right? It goes back to the foundation of learning science, the foundation of training development, that we perhaps have forgotten a little bit as we get caught up with technologies. And this is the advice that I typically give to the community. Pay attention to technology. It is immensely important. Don't forget about it. But more importantly, don't forget that it is about learning.
Yeah, and I think when we've been doing our research, David, that kind of concept of the learner being at the center of this is something that's really important, but they can get caught up with the newfangled ideas and all the things that are going on, and we take our eye off that. And I think one of the things I've noticed at the conference about the future of learning is about this whole essence about the experience, the customer experience. And I know, Phil, from the banking perspective, there's a whole focus on the customer. So has that got any relevance to the way we think about learners?
I think it's a brilliant parallel. Because I think the increase in focus, not just in financial services, but in organizations as a whole, is around customer centricity. But to David's point, it's a case of engaging technology, but not being swept away with it. Right? So it's a case of actually understanding it. And I think it goes back to the fundamental point is, what is the problem, what is the objective that you're trying to solve by the intervention, right? And then looking at the individual, because otherwise it's just a futile effort. I think that the interesting, showing my age again, I was around when I used to be called training, but rather than learning. And I was there on the cusp when we switched across from me running Lotus 1, 2, 3 courses to issuing a CD-ROM. And for those of you who don't know what a CD-ROM is, we used to put learning on a disk, had to go into a cartridge in a disk and into a computer. And in a bank, someone at the higher echelons decided that we could save a fortune by removing all the classroom-based training and switching to the CD-ROMs. The reaction from learners was absolute repulsion, right? Repulsion because the solution wasn't necessarily fit for purpose, but the way it was introduced was different. And so the expectation was that when you went to learn something like Excel or a Word, you would be in a classroom environment. You would be face-to-face. You would be talking with each other and talking with the facilitator. To switch from that overnight to being stuck into the smallest, darkest room in the building, which was the learning lab, and given a CD and told to teach itself, is major. So I think the lesson they take away from that is don't just jump at technology for technology's sake, and be very, very mindful around how it's implemented and how you align that with learner centricity. And then Laura, as you said, we've been talking about learner centricity for as long as I've been in the profession. It's a question of how serious we are actually towards doing it. I think that's the challenge now.
Yeah, I'm certainly seeing that through in the research that we've been doing, is that when we put the individual's journey, not just as their learning journey, but their journey in a career in an organization, and see how we can support that through continual learning, that seems to have a much bigger impact in the workplace as well. So I think that kind of learner centricity is critical. What do you think holds us back from doing that? We talk about it a lot, but what do you think are the barriers to actually genuinely putting our staff in the driving seat. Norazah, have you got a view on that?
We talk about content knowledge, and content knowledge is important, but more important is our ability to kind of go down deeper into the ability to reassess situations. And I think many times we don't do that enough. We don't do the breaking down of mental models and mental structures enough. And we have to do that for the purpose of our organizations. If we are to build a resilient workforce, we must enable the workforce to ask questions. And it's a very difficult thing to do because we prefer a compliant workforce.
Yeah.
We prefer an obedient workforce. All right? How to build an environment that's safe for the workforce or for our fellow workers, if you like, to ask questions. When they are able to ask questions and they are able to satisfy themselves, and when things change, when things happen, they're more ready for it, usually.
That's great. I mean, we've often seen as well in our work that one of the skills that we're going to need in the future as L&D people are the skills of the journalist.
Yeah.
I mean, the ability to be able to ask questions and the ability to demonstrate exactly what you said in our own work. Very conscious that we're short on time, and we've already covered a number of topics that are going to be very critical for us to be ready for the future of learning. We've covered the fact that we need to be much more learner-centric than we have been before. We need to look at content, we need to look at design and offerings. We need to look at the way that we facilitate conversation within an organization. I'd like to ask you to give us one practical thing that you think that we as learning professionals need to do differently. If you could only have just one thing for us to leave this conference with, for us to be ready for this future that we've discussed, what would that one thing be? Because I'm very conscious, we've got many more things go on after this session. So I'm looking for the person who would like to answer the first. Oh, Norazah, thank you. So one thing that we need to do to get ready for the future of learning.
Together we excel.
So to connect and to keep learning from each other.
For me, the collaborative element is very important. We cannot work alone. We need many, individuals or many groups in order to achieve what we want for the future. Because future is very subjective. Because it's very dynamic. You know what's going to happen, but we are going towards that. So each individual has his own ability, and everything must be versatile. Perfect. And we have our own role.
Together we excel. Absolutely. Phil, I'm sorry, but you're going to have to beat that.
I'm going to use a horrible Americanism phrase. L&D professionals need to eat their own dog food. In other words, everything that we're talking about in terms of being disrupted and changing, L&D professionals need to be prepared to disrupt themselves and to reinvent themselves and to refocus. And I think it's fine to be sitting here and saying, oh, we're L&D professionals and we're this. Yeah, what about the profession itself? What about the way in which you work and the way in which you do things? I think that same internal focus needs to come back.
So we need to kind of start with ourselves. I use the analogy, we've got to put our own oxygen mask on before we can help the teams that we're supporting to be able to think and work differently. Together we excel, eat our own dog food. I'm loving it. David, final word to you.
I think for me it's about curiosity. Be curious, ask questions, right? Find out things that you are otherwise uncomfortable to know about. Find out about blockchain, find out about big data, find out about culture. Find out about what your competitors are doing. Be curious. There's enough information out on the internet. There's really no excuse for any of us to say that we can't find any information out there. It's all out on the internet. But what's stopping us from knowing more is curiosity. The moment we are complacent is the moment we die. That's all.
Excellent. So thank you so much for that. And just I'd like to thank you all for kind of contributing. I hope you found something useful. From my own perspective as well, I think one of the things that we do need to do is we've got to kind of let go. And that analogy that I often use is that the analogy of the monkey trap is where you can trap a monkey by putting a banana in a crate. The monkey reaches in, grabs the banana, and is trapped because he won't let go of the past. And I think as a profession, we sometimes are in danger of doing that. We're holding on to the things that we're familiar with, and we like to talk about what's going on, but sometimes we just got to let go in order to move into that place where we can really make that difference to organizational performance, productivity, innovation. I think we've got a fantastic future ahead of us. And I'd like to thank the panel for kind of opening that out. And I'd like to thank you for being willing to let go of the things that you know are holding you back in the past, because your future starts when you go back to work tomorrow. So thank you very much, and thank you to the panel.
Thank you.